Hey Wargamers, I've done 2 videos now looking at the math hammer of the new Tau Empire Codex and seeing which of the units in that book are the most efficient for a variety of targets. The first one was looking more generally, and then the second one narrowed in on some crisis suits. And both of those videos got a really good feedback, and one of the comments that popped up in both times was a request for me to rerun those analyses considering profiles that reduce damage taken by 1 down to a minimum of 1. And so that's what we're going to do today. Again, some basics of what we're looking at here. I'm assuming rapid fire range, so pulse rifles get 2 shots, for example. I'm assuming that fusion and ion are both within Melta or overcharged. So that's a little bit different than our first analysis. I'm assuming that in these -1 damage scenarios, you are going to be doing everything you can to get the most damage. And so fusion is within Melta and ion is overcharged in those contexts. It's not accounting for any reactions though, so not accounting for support systems or tactical philosophy, sept, tenant, or auras, anything like that is not in the math here. It's just looking at the unit profiles in isolation. And again, a friendly reminder that this is just a tool to help you understand what the relative cost and benefits are of things, right? This is just one piece of the puzzle and is not the entire puzzle itself. So there's a lot to consider beyond just these numbers here. All right, so we're going to look at a variety of different profiles here, just like we have in the past, although with things that have -1 damage, there's a far narrower range of potential target profiles. So we're going to look at 9 today, 9 different profiles that have -1 damage, at least in some context, and look at the top 7 different units for each of those profiles in terms of offensive point efficiency. So starting off with a few things that are toughness 5, we start off with toughness 5, 3-up save, 2 wounds. We see that Pathfinders with rail rifles are the most efficient. And again, this time I'm going to split the specialist Pathfinders into their respective roles, just because I think that gives a little bit more context instead of just referring to them as specialist Pathfinders. So we start off with Pathfinders with rail rifles, then breachers, then ion Pathfinders, then the Storm Surge with the driver cannon, then the Hammerhead, of course, with a railgun, crisis suits with burst cannon, plasma rifle, and flamer, and then broadsides with the heavy rail rifle. Those are your top 7 most efficient ways to dispatch a Plague Marine. Then moving on to a profile of toughness 5, 2-up save, 3 wounds, and a 4-up invulnerable save. This is basically your Blight Lord Terminators. Again, we see Pathfinders with rail. That's going to be a pretty common thing throughout this video. So Pathfinders with rail rifles are your most efficient, followed by the Hammerhead, then Breachers, then Pathfinders with ion, the Storm Surge with the blast cannon, then the broadside with the heavy rail rifle, and Storm Surge with the driver cannon. Then wrapping up this slate, we have toughness 5, a 2-up save with 7 wounds. This is essentially an enforcer battlesuit, which is going to be a more common thing now, certainly than in the past. We have a Pathfinder with a rail rifle as your most efficient choice, then a Hammerhead with railgun, a broadside with heavy rail rifle, crisis suits with 2 fusion blaster and a plasma rifle, crisis suit with 2 fusion blasters and a flamer, crisis suit with 2 fusion blasters and a cyclic ion blaster, and a crisis suit with 3 fusion blasters. And again, that's assuming that you're in Melta range, and that probably is skewing the results toward the fusion blaster a bit there, but certainly is meaningful. All right, the next group of 3, we're going to start again with an enforcer, but this time give it a shield generator. So if it has a shield generator, the most efficient pick is a Hammerhead because of those mortal wounds and ignoring invulnerable saves. And then the Pathfinder's rail rifle, then breachers, then a Pathfinder with an ion rifle, then broadsides with a heavy rail rifle, Storm Surge with the blast cannon, and then crisis suits with 2 fusion blasters and a cyclic ion blaster. So you can see quite a big difference in the rankings when we include that shield generator because of the mitigating effect that a invulnerable save has on a lot of those different weapons. Moving on to toughness 6 with a 4-up save and 9 wounds. This is your scrapjet, your Ork scrapjet. So this has ramshackle, and so that only does -1 to larger weapons. It doesn't apply to all weapons universally. And so there's a disproportionate impact of that rule on those higher strength weapons like fusion blasters or overcharged ion. And so for the most efficient picks here, we see the rail rifle Pathfinders, we see the ion rifle Pathfinders, and then the Hammerhead, and then Vespids show up again. Finally we see some Vespids showing up. Crisis with 2 Fusion Blasters and a Plasma Rifle, Broadside with Heavy Rail Rifle, and then Crisis with 2 Fusion Blasters and a Cyclic Ion Blaster. And again, you'll notice that a lot of those higher scoring profiles either do mortal wounds or are below toughness 8, which means that they're not affected by the -1 damage roll. And then looking at toughness 6 with 3 up save, 8 wounds, and a 5++, we have Hammerheads being your best choice, Pathfinders with Rail, Pathfinders with Ion, then Crisis with 2 Fusion Blasters and a Flamer, Crisis with a Fusion Blaster, Cyclic Ion Blaster, and a Flamer, Breachers, and a Broadside with Heavy Rail Rifle. Okay, again, and then our last group of 3 here, looking at something like a Contemptor Dreadnought or a Demon Prince. We have Pathfinders with Rail, Hammerheads, Pathfinders with Ion, Crisis with 2 Fusion Blasters and a Flamer, Crisis with Fusion Blasters, Cyclic Ion Blasters, and Flamers, Broadsides with Heavy Rail Rifles, Crisis with Fusion Blaster, Plasma Rifle, and Flamer. Moving on to Toughness 8 with a 3 up save, 12 wounds, and a 5++. That's something like a Plague Burst Crawler. We have Hammerheads, which you would hope would be good against a vehicle, right? Pathfinders with Rail, Storm Surge with the Blast Cannon, Broadside with Heavy Rail Rifle, Pathfinders with Ion, Crisis with 2 Fusion Blasters and a Cyclic Ion Blaster, and a Crisis with 2 Fusion Blasters and a Plasma Rifle, right? And basically across the board here, we're seeing that a double Fusion Blaster loadout is the best loadout for Crisis suits in the majority of these cases, right? 2 Fusion Blasters and then something else, either a Flamer or a Plasma Rifle or a Cyclic Ion Blaster is generally going to be the combo for dealing with these things that have -1 damage. And then our final profile is Mortarion, Toughness 8, 3 up save, 18 wounds, 4++. Hammerhead will punch him right in the face. Pathfinders with Rail are in a relatively close second, of course, very different units. Storm Surge with the Blast Cannon, then Broadsides with Heavy Rail Rifle. Probably the way I would choose to get rid of Mortarion is with those Heavy Rail Rifle broadsides. Pathfinders with Ion, Crisis with a Burst Cannon, Fusion Blaster, and Flamer, and then Crisis with a Burst Cannon and 2 Fusion Blasters. So again, we see that double Fusion Blaster loadout show up, but we get a little bit more volume of fire stuff going on here in terms of the profile. And this is just looking at the profile of toughness, save, wound count, and the -1 damage. It's not taking account into any other rules. So we're just looking at the profile. So yeah, we see a lot of the same contenders show up, right? A lot of Pathfinders, a lot of Hammerhead, a lot of Broadsides, and yes, a lot of Crisis suits. There's only a few cases where some other units popped up, right? We see Breachers pop up a few times. We see Vespid pop up once in the case of the Scrapjet, but by and large, it's Hammerheads and Crisis suits and Broadsides and Storm Surges that are doing the most efficient work on these -1 damage targets. So, I think a lot of those units are probably going to be in your army list anyway. And so it just gives you a little bit of insight about how you might want to equip them in the case of bringing multiple Fusion Blasters on them, or how you might want to select units from within your army once you're on the tabletop to deal with these things, right? If you have the choice of multiple different Crisis suits units that you want to put in one corner of the table or the other, this can help you decide which unit goes in which corner in order to line up against a particular opponent. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, happy wargaming. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. A while ago I made my own miniature. If you are interested in showing your support for the channel on the tabletop, you can pick one up either on Etsy if you're in the US or directly through me worldwide. Special thanks to our sponsor, the Magnet Baron, and also all the good folks over on Patreon, especially Mate Monk, Marcy, A Little Pink Monster, Bennaby Jones, Durza, Ever Keller, Robbie Goodwin, Jose Gomez, Ruger, Drew Pratley, Michael Byrne, Zealous Brimstone, Scott Heater, Stephen Cowan, Jared Egler, Chris Kessler, Tao Oswald, and Shifty.